Well, good morning, everybody out there in Facebook land. This is the Fist Pump Guy live over at Bondy's Toyota Enterprise, Alabama. And we're going to continue today on our leasing discussion, okay? We've talked a lot about advantages, and now I'm going to touch on some concerns or disadvantages. So y'all come on in. I'll tell you what, I know a lot of the country is under some storms and some bad weather, snow, but let me tell you something. It's beautiful outside today, southeast Alabama. And of course, yesterday it wasn't, but today is beautiful. Appreciate you guys coming on in here. We're going to finish up our discussion on leasing. And hopefully that this little series that I've done over the past week or so has helped somebody out there understand leasing a little bit better. Forgive my pen, that's where I stick it most of the time so I don't lose it. So y'all come on in. We're going today. I'm going to just kind of rehash what I talked about advantage-wise. And then I'm going to talk on some concerns that you may have or disadvantages of leasing over a purchase. We talked about leasing is a pre-planned usage. It's basically you're paying for what you're going to use ahead of time. You already know what you're going to use, so that's what you're paying for. You're not paying for everything. Most people trade every 2 to 3 years, so we talked about the fact that if you're trading every 2 to 3 years, you're always going to be rolling negative equity. That never goes away. Eventually it catches up. What's up, my friend Jeffrey? I missed your video this morning, man. I'm going to try to go back and catch it soon. What's up, Jason? But we distinguish that if you trade every 2 or 3 years, you just keep piling negative equity. Now, I'm going to tell you, a lot of people is going to argue against this, but I'm going to tell you what the disadvantages are here soon. But there's a lot more advantages than disadvantages, I can promise you. Okay, then we talked about negative equity, how you don't have to worry about negative equity in a lease, because if you're leasing every 2 to 3 years, all you're doing is turning in that lease and leasing something else. So you don't have to worry about that because the company puts a value on that vehicle. So you turn it in, you either turn it in or you refinance the remainder, and that's what you'd be making payments on. Sometimes it's beneficial to do that, sometimes it's not. As I said yesterday and day before, Tundra residual for right now is about 80% on most of the trucks, on the Tundras. So therefore, if that's the case on your back end, sometimes refinancing that lease amount on a Tundra may be a higher payment than your actual lease payment was. And talk a little bit about, if you lease, that guarantees that you're going to have new technology all the time. You're going to have new body styles all the time. You could possibly have a less payment on a lease, not all the time, but even if the payment was the same, remember what I said? Even if the payment was the same, you're still getting a new car every 2 to 3 years, 4 years, whatever your lease term is. I also talked about how most of the time, depending on your car company and Corey, your car company, your brand, your manufacturer, that you could have coverages that whole time. We'll talk about warranties. Most car manufacturers have 3 years, 36,000, 5 years, 60,000 powertrain. So most of the time, depending on your lease term, you'd be able to have full coverage that whole time. And then instead of having to buy extended warranties or anything, you can just lease you another vehicle. Now, there are some extended contracts and things that you could add to that just to make sure, but I'll cover that here in a second if I don't forget. Also, I talked a little bit about the fact that, like Toyota, for example, has maintenance free for 2 years on all new vehicles. So 2 years of 25,000 mile maintenance. And some of our vehicles, a lot of our vehicles have up to 4 years maintenance. So there's some more coverages, more maintenance, oil changes, tire rotations that could possibly be covered during the duration of that lease. Whereas a term, you would still have another 2 to 3 years, depending on the situation, of maybe possibly no warranties or no maintenance coverage. So those are just some quick things I talked about. I forget what the one was yesterday I talked about. I talked about accidents, the fact that a lot of times on a regular purchase trade, you have to typically worry about an accident on it, that the dealer, the appraiser, whoever's putting a value on your car has to look at that on a Carfax to make sure that, look, that thing's been in an accident, so I got to deduct a certain percentage off of that depending on the severity of the accident. But on a lease, a lot of times, as long as depending on the manufacturer, it could vary. But with Toyota, for example, if you had a minor accident or something, as long as you had that repair done, is in good shape, then most time they're going to overlook that and you're going to be able to lease something else without having to pay an extra fee or whatever the case may be. Now today, I don't know how long I've been on already, but it's today we're going to talk about some concerns or disadvantages, because I know a lot of people's mentality, they start thinking of disadvantages why they don't lease. Well, number one and first and foremost, and I want to cover this, the first thing most people say is if you lease, you don't own your vehicle, right? Well, guess what? I hate to break it to you, but if you finance a car for 72 months and you're only in 3 years in it, guess what? You don't own that vehicle. The bank owns it, okay? Most of you guys out there probably have a house, right? And we always say we own that house, but who really owns it, right? The finance company, the bank, whoever financed your house. Because you miss payments, guess what they're going to do? They're going to take that house. You don't get to keep it, right? So I will say this, that leasing, you don't own it, correct. The leasing company has the loan on that. The purchase, you don't own it either. The bank or whoever owns it. Okay, so let's get that out of there. That's a misconception that people throw out there when they're talking about leasing, that you don't own the vehicle. You don't own the vehicle anyway unless you throw a cash out there, right? That's the only way you would really, truly own the vehicle. Yes, it's in your name. Yes, you're responsible for it. But if you're making payments on it, you don't own it. The bank owns it. Okay, so let's get that out of there. I want to make sure everybody understands that. The difference is with lease, you can own two vehicles, where in a purchase, most people are just owning the one vehicle if they keep it to 72 months, which we've already shown that most of the time, that's not the case. All right, now vehicles have got more expensive, so therefore, sometimes leasing is a better option for you anyway, okay? Now, the other disadvantage or concern that somebody may have is condition of the vehicle. When you turn it in, that you may get hit with some conditioning fees or whatever. Now, I will say this, I don't know every manufacturer's stipulations on this. I don't know all that, but I'm just speaking on behalf of Toyota. I know most of the time, because they look at it average condition, okay? That vehicle is in average condition, which is much like when we appraise a vehicle, we look at it in average condition, no matter if it's 1 year old or 2 years old, 3 years old. If it's really bad, then we may look at it fair or below average or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, leasing companies, 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, looks at it as average condition. So what does that mean? Well, I will say this. If it's been smoked in, cigarette burns, busted windshield, dented fender, scratches up and down the side, bald tires, curbed wheels. What's up, Keith? Curbed wheels. Guess what's going to happen? They're going to hit you with a type of reconditioning fee of some sort, right? But guess what? If you trade that same vehicle in, you're going to get hit with the same deductions. Okay, the values may be different. You know, we may look at it may need tires that was going to cost us $700-800. The leasing company may say, well, we can probably spend $500 to get tires. So there are some different avenues there. But keep in mind, condition of vehicle is important. But just remember, it's not something where it has to be perfect, because there's going to be average things. Obviously, if it's something where it needs tires, you may want to put tires on it. Okay, I'm going to get to the mileage here in a second. That's why I'm saving it for last. Jason, I appreciate you bringing that up, though. But if there's bald tires on it, you might need to put tires on it, because they're going to look at that. Okay, but look, when we look at a vehicle most of the time on a trade, especially if it's a used, a pre-owned Camry, for example, we may look at the tires at least 50%, because that's what it's going to take for us to certify that unit. Okay, if the tires are all chopped up and they're 30%, we're going to have to replace those. So depending if we have to replace 2 or 4, that's one case. With us, all the tires have to match. So if there's 2 different brand tires on there, we're going to have to replace at least 2 of those tires depending on condition of the other 2. Those are just examples. Leasing, they do look at the average condition of vehicle, and depending, I guess, who looks at the vehicle, they may or may not look at it as average. But if you got cigarette burns, busted windshield, stuff like that, yes, they're going to hit you with some fees, and yes, you probably have to pay for that. So, but it don't have to be immaculate either. So keep in mind, they look at it as an average condition car. So whatever you would consider average, there's stains all in the seat, the carpet's tore up, all that kind of stuff, that's not necessarily average condition. So that's something that you have to look at, and you determine that. You determine how you take care of vehicles. If leasing may be an option for you, that is a concern. Condition of the vehicle is a concern. Now, most people, okay, other than the fact they say you don't ever own the vehicle, most people have a concern about mileage. And I was going to touch on this today, which is why I wanted to do this last one, because I wanted to make sure we take the misconceptions out of there. Okay. Now, think back to my first video I did, or second video, where I said most people that trade every 2 or 3 years have at least $3,000 to $5,000 negative equity on average when they trade. Okay, I don't care what the car business shows you when you go there. They're doctoring numbers. Just because you owe $20,000 doesn't mean your car is worth $20,000. Okay, people say I won't pay off for my vehicle. Well, there's ways to people to cover numbers up in order to show you that a value. That doesn't mean that's what that vehicle's worth. Okay, keep that in mind. So when we're talking about mileage, okay, obviously when you trade a vehicle, mileage, the higher the mileage, the less the value. Does that make sense? Okay, now keep in mind the pre-planned usage that you're doing in a lease is a mileage that you say you're going to use. So if it's 15,000, 12,000, 10,000, 18,000, whatever the mileage restriction is, that's what you're saying the mileage is going to be. Now, like I said, think back. I said the average trade-in negative equity is 3,000 to 5,000. Regardless if they show you that or not, it's there in that value of that vehicle you're purchasing. I promise you, that negative equity doesn't go away. All right, because like I said, car business, we're here to make a little bit of money. We can't make a killing on these vehicles anymore. But at the end of the day, if it's $3,000 negative equity, just because they show you an extra $3,000 on your trade, doesn't mean that negative equity is not there. It's there, I promise you. Okay, and you know, most of y'all know me. I'm gonna be up front with you. I don't even, at the end of the day, it does me no good to sell a car if I gotta lie about it. I'm just up front about everything. Okay, so let's talk about mileage. And I know this video is going to be a little bit longer, but this is an important point. We're always concerned about mileage, regardless if you purchase the vehicle or if you are leasing, right? So if you trade in a vehicle every 2 to 3 years and you are, let's say, 50,000 mileage, the books, all the appraisers are going to hit you with a mileage adjustment up or down, right? So keep in mind, 3,000 to 5,000 average negative equity. Could be more, could be a little bit less, but I'm just going to say 3 to 5 if you trade every 2 to 3 years. Okay, I want to throw this out there. Okay, so you're concerned about mileage, buy some more mileage, whatever the case would be, because at the end of the day, like I said, if that payment's the same as a purchase, if you're getting a vehicle every 2 to 3 years, leasing's still a better option, even if the payment's the same. All right, so I want to throw this out there. If I said you were going to go over 5,000 miles over your mileage, okay, with Toyota, I'm using a calculator here, and you're not going to be able, because everything's going to be twisted, but here's my point. There are times when people go over mileage, okay, there are times. But think about it in this aspect. If you trade every 2 to 3 years and your negative equity is going to be 3,000 to 5,000, you can guarantee that. Unless you put a bunch of money down or your previous trade was paid for or something like that, there's negative equity there, regardless if they show it to you or not, it's there. So let's say you go over 5,000 miles. 17 cents a mile times 5,000, 17 cents a mile times 5,000 miles, right? That's $850 in mileage penalty. Okay? I hope you see where I'm going with this. All right. The difference is you would have to pay. That would be covered up in a thing. But my point is you're paying the same thing regardless if you're probably paying more negative equity by trading than you are by paying extra mileage. Does that make sense? So let's do 10,000. So 17 cents times 10,000. Let's say you went over 10,000 miles. That's still only $1,700. My point is even if you go over mileage, in a lot of cases, you're still going to be in a better situation paying the additional mileage that you go over. Like I said, ours is 17 cents a mile. If you go over your mileage versus trading every 2 or 3 years and having $3,000 to $5,000, $6,000 negative equity. You follow me? Because you may not see it on that purchase, but if you try to trade in 2 or 3 years, you're going to have $10,000 or $12,000 negative equity because that negative equity doesn't go away. Remember, vehicles don't appreciate. Right? Most of the time, unless it's like an old collector's item, you're not going to get more than the vehicle's worth. They may show you more than it's worth, the dealership, but all they're doing there is they're either taking it off in an addendum or they're taking it out of the profit of the vehicle, which that's getting slimmer and slimmer. So you may see that less and less. But I hope you understand where the mileage thing comes in. Because yes, you do have mileage restrictions, but when you look at the overall scheme of it, even if you went over 10,000 miles over the mileage, you're still only paying $1,700 in mileage fee. Okay? If you trade a vehicle, in most cases in 2 to 3 years, which most people do, you got $3,000 to $5,000 negative equity. So which one's better? That's the question. If you're putting 40,000 miles on a vehicle a year like we talked on yesterday, Corey, leasing may not be the option for you. That's not something that I would probably recommend. But if you need a third vehicle, right? You need something that you just to run around town or go down the street to see family. Leasing may be an option for you. just so you don't mile up your other vehicle. Like if you have a business vehicle, for example, and they only allow you so many miles, you may need another vehicle, and leasing may be the option for you on that case. Because even if you take 1 or 2 trips a year, you know, if the rest of the time you're only putting 700 or 800 miles on it a month, no big deal. Like I probably don't average 700 or 800 miles a month on mine, and I lease mine, and I've taken some long trips. So I didn't even hit 12,000 miles in a year. So this year will probably be less than that, you know, I hope. But either way, I'm not that concerned about it because, like I said, the residual on the Tundra is really high. Trade-in value is going to be really high on the Tundra. But like I said, if you went over 10,000 miles over the mileage that you say you're going to use, and most people don't. Most people don't go that far over mileage. If they do, it's just a couple thousand. And let's just say it's, like I said, 5,000 miles. That's only $800-something, $850 with Toyota. Now, other brands may have a higher mileage restraint penalty, but I hope you guys get the point on that. Okay, I hope you get the point. Because even if somebody's not showing you negative equity in a trade, it's there. I promise you. If a retail amount on this vehicle is $22,000 that we can sell it for, realistically, regardless of it's not worth $22,000. I just want you to know that, not to a car dealer. Now, sometimes you may be able to sell vehicles for more than they're worth to us, but if there's got to be a profit margin there, car dealers are not going to give you $22,000 for a vehicle they can sell for $22,000. It doesn't make sense. Hopefully, what's up, Johnny? Hopefully, you can use your common sense to figure that out. But everybody says they won't pay off for their vehicle. Well, if you owe $20,000, that doesn't mean it's worth $20,000. Because if you owed $0, would it be worth $0? Doesn't make sense to me either. So that's why I wanted to do these videos, because I need you to understand what leasing is. I could go either way with leasing versus purchase, but most of the time, based on people's trading habits and buying habits, 2 to 3 years, much like a cell phone, people want a phone every couple years. Okay, the only ones that don't want a phone every few years is the ones that still use flip phones, and they don't care about all that stuff. But you know, for most of us, it's important. That's why I want to do these videos. I hope y'all got something out of this. Like I said, go through my timeline if you want the whole series. I am going to end up uploading them all to my YouTube channel. Just search the Fist Pump Guy on YouTube. I've got 360 something videos on there. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you subscribe, because I have all kinds of different videos, training videos, product videos on my YouTube channel. If you're in the market for a vehicle in this area, anywhere, I got a car going out to Mississippi and to Georgia in a week or 2 that I've sold off of my social media. So I appreciate that for everybody. Absolutely. That's what I say, Johnny. That's why I did this whole thing, because most people don't really understand leasing, even though they claim they do. I wanted to set the record straight, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in. So, looking for a vehicle? Give me a call. I know it's backwards, but it's 334-447-0585. Bondy's Toyota, 519 Boll Weevil Circle, the Fist Pump Guy, selling cars the right way, because it's the only way I know. Follow the Fist Pump Enterprise.